Picture this. It's the 12th century, and one woman's voice cuts through 1,000 years of silence. She was a theologian, a scientist, a prophet, and somehow a composer. We're talking about the incredible Hildegard von Bingen. Seriously, just let that sink in. The first known female composer. In the entire history of Western music up to that point, she's the one we can actually name. It's like finding a single bright star in a huge dark sky. And that right there is the big mystery we're diving into. I mean, if she could create such stunning music back then, why was there just silence for centuries after her? It's a huge question. And to get to the bottom of it, we have to first understand the world that tried so hard to keep women quiet.
So let's set the stage. Because to really get how amazing her achievement was, you have to understand the world she lived in. A world that was actively trying to silence women. What she did wasn't just, unusual. It was basically impossible.
You can see it happening over time, right? In the very early church, men and women actually sang together. It was seen as this beautiful communion of souls. But then, things started to change. That idea slowly got chipped away. Fast forward to the High Middle Ages, and pretty much all the official church music was performed by choirs of men and boys. The convents? Well, that became just about the only place left where a woman's voice could be heard in sacred song. And why did this happen? Well, the arguments against women singing were, frankly, all over the place. There was this fear that a woman's voice was too sensuous, whatever that means. They linked it to pagan rituals. And, of course, there was the go-to literal interpretation of scripture telling women to be silent in church. For a very, very long time, those arguments won out. Okay, so you have this backdrop of enforced institutional silence. And right in the middle of all of that, this absolutely incredible figure emerges. Someone who didn't just sing, she composed. And her music, you have to understand, didn't come out of nowhere. It came from the mind of a true genius, a polymath. I mean, get this, she was a theologian, a philosopher, a prophet. She wrote groundbreaking works on science and medicine. We're talking botany and gynecology. She invented her own language. She went on preaching tours. She wrote letters to popes and emperors. So yeah, calling her just a composer doesn't even begin to cover it. This was a mind on a whole other level. And this wasn't some hobby for her. No way. She left us a huge collection of her work, the Symphonia. We're talking 76 different pieces of music. And for her time, this stuff was radical. The melodies just soar, pushing way beyond what normal chant was doing. It required a vocal range that was pretty much unheard of in sacred music back then. And tucked inside that incredible collection is her masterpiece, the Ordo Virtutum, or the Play of Virtues. And get this, it's the earliest surviving morality play, like a full-on musical drama about the fight for a human soul. It's the first one we have. Even just looking at the cast of characters tells you so much about what she believed. You've got the soul, the main character, and 17 virtues like humility and hope, all sung by women. But then there's the devil. He's a male voice part, but with a very, very specific rule about how he sounds. And here's why that's so cool. According to Hildegard, the devil doesn't get to sing. He only yells or grunts. Why? Because for her, music was divine harmony. It was the sound of God. So the devil, who is basically the absence of God, can't produce that harmony. He can only make noise. He's literally cut off from the music of heaven. How brilliant is that? So, okay, that brings us right back to our big question. In a world so dead set on silencing women's voices, how on earth did she get away with it? How did she not only compose, but compose music that she claimed was the very language of God? Well, her strategy was pure genius. It was all in how she framed it. She says it right here. She was untaught by anyone. She never claimed to have studied music or singing. Instead, she insisted it all came directly from God. She wasn't the composer, you see. She was just the instrument. And that was her masterstroke. See, Hildegard had these intense divine visions ever since she was a kid. Now, some neurologists today think they might have been a form of severe migraine, which is fascinating in itself. But in her world, they were messages from God. And here's the crucial part. She managed to get the Pope himself to officially approve them. So now you couldn't argue with her. To silence Hildegard would be to silence God. Checkmate. She even had a special word for this divine life force that flowed through everything. Viriditas.
It literally means greenness. For her, it was this lush, vibrant, juicy, life-giving energy of God and creation. And you can see that idea everywhere in her work, in her science, in her theology, and you can absolutely hear it in the wild, soaring, living melodies of her music. All right, so let's put all the pieces together. It's time to finally solve the mystery of how this one, singular voice was able to ring out so clearly. So, what was her secret? Why Hildegard? What made her the exception to a rule that had been in place for centuries? The truth is, it wasn't just one thing. It was a perfect storm of factors. She had divine authority, thanks to her Pope-approved visions. She had power and education because she came from a noble family. As an abbess, she had a protected space to work in, and crucially, a whole community of nuns who could perform her music. On top of all that, her genius was just so undeniable you couldn't ignore it. And, maybe most importantly, she was smart enough to make sure her own works were collected and saved. It was this rare, maybe even unrepeatable combination of circumstances. So you see, Hildegard von Bingen wasn't just the first known female composer. For hundreds of years, she was basically the only one. She was this breathtaking anomaly, a singular voice of genius in an age that was demanding silence. She proved what was possible, even when everything and everyone was trying to make it impossible. And her story still matters so much today because it challenges us. She's this incredible model of what genius can look like when it refuses to be silenced. And her story leaves us with a really powerful question, one that still resonates all these centuries later. If a voice this amazing was almost lost to history, whose voices are we not hearing right now?